before the world ever heard her voice, before the lights, the stages, the applause, ... She was just a girl, black, poor, wounded. There was no fame. There were no promises. No one was saying, "You're going to make it." What there was, ... was darkness and a seed. Small, lonely, invisible to the eyes of the world, but alive, carrying a code within it. A code not even she could understand, but one that already held the fruit of the future. This is the law of gestation. Everything born great, ... starts small. Every tree begins underground. Every grand destiny begins in the hidden. Oprah was born without privilege, but she was born with purpose, and that made all the difference. While pain tore through her childhood, while racism silenced her presence, ... while abuse tried to crush her identity, the law was already at work. In the invisible, something was being formed. In the silence, a pattern was beginning to take shape. She wrote, she read, she prayed, she talked to God alone. She spoke to no one. But she was already rehearsing for the world. While others only saw misery, God saw preparation. While the world saw a vulnerable girl, creation saw a voice being forged, and the pattern kept repeating. Pain, response. Overcoming faith, pain, response, resilience. Faith, it was like a secret code, repeating at every stage, with every tear, with every rejection. Because before you reap, you must endure. Before you shine, ... you must withstand the pressure underground. The Oprah the world applauds, ... was born in silence, in anonymity, in abandonment, in poverty. But above all, she was born in faith. It wasn't luck, it was a seed. And the law of gestation was already in motion. Before the most influential woman on the planet, before the billionaire, before the sole communicator, ... She was just an invisible child on the map of America. Born in 1954 in Mississippi, one of the cruelest places in the southern United States, where poverty, racism, and exclusion were the rule, not the exception. Oprah came into the world marked by statistics that screamed she would never make it. Daughter of a teenage mother with no structure, no support, no prospects, no crib, no decent roof, no father figure. She was handed to her grandmother as a baby. Raised in a shack with no electricity or running water, she washed clothes by the river, played with dolls made from corn husks. But inside that forgotten little house, something was being born. Something invisible to common eyes. A seed. It wasn't privilege. It wasn't visible talent. It was buried purpose. And, like every seed, her journey began in the darkness. At 3 years old, she learned to read. The Bible became her constant companion. By 6, she was already reciting full verses in local churches. Their life began whispering a code. Your voice has power. But the world doesn't go silent just because someone starts to speak. Sometimes the world screams louder to silence what threatens to break the cycle. At 9, she was abused. At 10, assaulted again and again and again by relatives, by people she trusted. Every time they tried to silence her soul with pain, a deeper layer of the seed was pushed into the ground. Darker, deeper, lonelier. At 14, she got pregnant. Her baby was born prematurely and died a few days later. She was shattered, carried guilt, shame, silence. But even then, in that muffled grief, something inside her refused to die. The law of gestation doesn't stop when your world collapses. It keeps going. It works in silence. It forms roots beneath the soul. While everyone saw a girl marked by failure, God saw a communicator being formed. While the world saw trash, creation saw fertile soil. Because there, in the place of pain, she held on to the same silent pattern. She kept reading, she kept writing. She kept speaking, she kept dreaming, even with no reason. That's the pattern that changes destinies. Pain, response, faith, consistency. She wasn't saved by luck, she was sustained by pattern. And in the dark, in silence, with no audience, ... that girl was being prepared. Because before any fruit comes the time of the invisible, and before the harvest comes the silent faithfulness of the underground. The Oprah the world would see decades later was already being formed there. Between tears and pages, between abuse and prayers, between rejection and reading. Because that's how the law of gestation works. It lets pain grow roots, before purpose grows wings. She didn't explode into the world all at once. Nothing great is born that way. She sprouted, quietly, delicately, but truly. After losing her child, Oprah was sent to live with her father in Nashville, Tennessee. And it was there, in that new soil, that the first drops of hope touched her roots. Her father, Vernon, was strict, but demanding. He imposed discipline. He made sure she read one book per week, that she wrote summaries, that she expressed herself clearly. And without realizing it, he was watering what already existed. He was awakening what time had buried. Dove into her studies. She joined school debates, won speech contests. The words that had once been her refuge, ... were now becoming her weapon. Now spoke with power. The girl who once suffered in silence. And for the first time, the world began to listen. At 17, she earned a scholarship to Tennessee State University. There, she studied communications. And at 19, sprouted on state television, becoming the youngest news anchor and the first Black woman to host a newscast on Nashville TV. But even there, the soil was still hostile. You're too emotional. Your hair is too kinky. Your body doesn't fit the standard. She heard it every day. Was no longer a seed. It was as if every step forward came with 10 hands trying to pull her back. But the Oprah of now. She was deep root. She didn't break easily. She responded with what she had always carried. Faith, consistency, intensity, because now she understood. Nothing will bloom on the outside, ... until it first blooms within. While they tried to fit her into a mold, she discovered that her power was precisely in what made her different. She wasn't a standard. She was a principle. She wasn't a copy. She was an original voice, and that voice, warm, firm, emotional, began to touch something in people, even when they said she didn't have the TV look. Even when they placed another anchor beside her to balance her presence. She stayed, she didn't rush time. She respected the process, because those who understand the law of gestation know a flower doesn't bloom in a day. But on the right day, it bursts forth with power. The sprout had emerged. The world had started to notice something in Oprah. The wounded girl had become a young woman, talented, with a strong voice and a light in her eyes that couldn't be ignored. She became a local news anchor. At 19, the first Black woman on that station, the youngest on the team. It seemed like the fruit was near, but she was still in the middle of the process. Because the desert always comes right after the first victory. It's the test between who you think you are and who you're truly becoming. Oprah entered the world of television, but television didn't want someone like her. You're too emotional. Your hair is too natural. Your body doesn't fit TV standards. It was as if every detail that made her unique was used as a reason to reject her. They tried to trim her down, box her in, silence her truth so she could fit the success formula. But Oprah wasn't made to follow formulas. She was the standard in the making. The law of gestation required her to endure the desert, not as punishment. She was fired from the news desk. Told she didn't belong, that she didn't belong, that she didn't have the right look, that she was bad on camera. The pain was immense. Her ego bled. Her identity shook. But the seed that had already grown roots, doesn't retreat. It adapts. It recalibrates. It keeps growing, even when the world says no. Oprah didn't quit on that overlooked stage. She accepted a job on a morning talk show, considered small, insignificant. But it was there that she finally bloomed as herself. No masks, no characters, no filters. She spoke with emotion, connected with truth, cried with guests, laughed loudly. She was human. And what once was seen as weakness became her greatest strength. People felt she was real. And that was the secret. She no longer had to seem like something. She already was. And the audience responded. The show exploded. And within months, Oprah became the face of success in Chicago. But she knew. This still wasn't the fruit. It was just the stem, growing strong. The dessert had taught her to trust, not in what she saw, but in what she carried. Because she had learned, the world may reject you. But if you keep watering your seed with faith, the entire universe will be forced to respect your harvest. She was no longer the quiet little girl from Mississippi. She was now a woman in the making, a force of nature, and, most importantly, she had survived the desert without betraying her essence. She had sprouted, she had grown, she had endured, and now she was ready to bloom. In 1984, Oprah was invited to host a morning show in Chicago called AM Chicago. It was small, unremarkable, low ratings, but she no longer needed a ready-made stage. She built the stage with her own presence. In less than a year, she turned the show into a ratings leader. And in 1986, the world met a new name. The Oprah Winfrey Show. But it wasn't just a talk show. It was a temple of healing broadcast on television. A space where human wounds found a voice. Where the invisible became visible. Where pain stopped being shame and became wisdom. She interviewed victims, abusers, presidents, celebrities, ordinary people carrying deep trauma. And she listened like no one else did. She looked people in the eye. She touched their soul. She stripped off the role of a star and became a vessel. The girl who was abused at 9 now helped thousands break their silence. The child who had no one to talk to had become the most listened to voice in America. She turned her pain into a bridge. She turned her story into a foundation for healing others. The stage didn't change her, simply amplified who she already was. While many used fame to show off, Oprah used fame to serve. And that is the true meaning of blooming. It's not when you shine to be admired. It's when you shine to light the way for others. She founded her own production company, launched magazines, produced films, donated millions. Built schools for girls in Africa, but none of it was done out of vanity. It was done out of vision. Because while the world saw success, she saw a mission. Oprah knew that a harvest without purpose is vanity, is legacy. But a harvest with intention, She became one of the most influential women of all time. Yet she kept praying the same prayer she had since she was a child. Use me, Lord. Let my life be of service to others. The seed had grown, had withstood the weight of the soil, the stones, the drought, and now it was blooming. But her greatest fruit wasn't money. It wasn't power. It wasn't fame. Her greatest fruit was meaning. She had already won. She had already broken records. She had already turned a talk show into an empire. But inside her, one truth rose higher than fame. This isn't about me. It's about what God is doing through me. She realized that the real war wasn't against poverty. It wasn't against racism. It wasn't against prejudice. The real war was spiritual. It was against the silence that kills from within, against the guilt that traps the soul, against the traumas hidden behind fake smiles. She understood that she wasn't chosen to entertain. She was called to illuminate. And like every warrior of light, she had to keep fighting, even after victory. The media tried to tear her down. Gossip, lies, criticism about her weight, attacks on her faith. But by now, she knew. Light disturbs those who live in darkness. And she didn't back down. She became stronger, more transparent, more spiritual. Oprah began to speak openly about faith, about intuition, about inner healing, about purpose. She created a global platform for spiritual leaders, therapists, authors, thinkers. She made millions reflect on the meaning of life. She made the world stop to listen to stories no one else dared to tell. And through it all, she never forgot who she once was. The wounded girl from Mississippi now led multitudes, but still carried in her heart the same phrase: "Everything I went through prepared me for this moment." Because now she understood. Every tear had been a tool, every trauma a training ground, every silence a rehearsal. The seed hadn't just survived, it had become a mighty tree. And it gave shade to those who never had shelter. She was no longer just a communicator. She was a warrior of light. And that light didn't come from fame. It came from pain transformed into mission. She knew, what heals is not the stage, it's truth with purpose. The world saw the shine. It saw the success. It saw the billions, the awards, the powerful speeches. But what no one saw was the process. No one saw the hidden years of pain, the nights of muffled crying into her pillow, the prayers whispered without knowing if anyone was listening. No one saw the seed being formed in the dark, because that's how the law of gestation works. In the hidden, in the invisible, in the silence. And it never fails. It only demands one thing: faithfulness to the process. Oprah was faithful. Faithful when no one was watching. Faithful when she was abused and still kept studying. Faithful when she was rejected by TV and still kept speaking. Faithful when she had nothing, but acted like she already carried everything. Because she did carry it. The seed already held the code of the fruit. She didn't need to appear great, she just needed to be consistent. While the world demanded speed, she chose patience. While the world demanded appearance, she chose presence. While others reshaped themselves to fit the mold, she broke the mold and built a new one. She understood something that changes everything. Success is not something you chase. It's something you manifest when you align with who you were created to be. She never chased fame. She chased meaning. And that's why fame came. She never chased applause. She chased truth. And that's why millions listened. Because the law of gestation doesn't respond to performance, it responds to purpose. It doesn't accelerate out of desperation. It blooms at the appointed time. And Oprah was the ideal soil. She endured the pain, respected the timing, honored the invisible. And when the fruit came, it wasn't just for her. It was for the whole world. Now that you know the story, now that you've seen where she came from, now that you understand the hidden code behind every step, there's only one question left, and you. What are you going to do with this? Are you going to keep saying you're not ready yet? That you lack opportunity? That your pain is holding you back? Or will you start acting like someone who already carries the fruit inside? Because the truth is simple, deep, and non-negotiable. You already are. You just need to be faithful to the process. You are a seed, and a seed never starts out big. It starts buried, in the dark, in uncertainty, under pressure. But that's not the end. That's the beginning. Because the law of gestation is at work in your life. Right now, even if you can't see it. Even if no one recognizes you. Even if it still hurts. It's building roots, shaping character, strengthening your foundation. And one day, you stay faithful, the world will see what you've been carrying all along. You don't need to have everything now. You just need to be like Oprah was. Consistent in pain, loyal to the process, aligned with your purpose. So the real question isn't, will it work out? The real question is, will you keep watering, even when nothing seems to be growing? Because the miracle doesn't happen from the outside in. It happens from the inside out. The next chapter is not about Oprah. Now, it's about you. Will you plant, or will you bury your dream? Will you carry it to term, or abandon it halfway? Will you repeat the cycle, or break the pattern? You already have the code. You've heard the story. You've seen the pattern. Now it's on you.